Let's talk a little baseball and the movement of information. Shohei Ohtani, 50-50 guy. Never been done. Did it last night in dramatic fashion. 6 for 6, 3 home runs, 5 extra base hits, 2 stolen bases, 10 RBIs. Just about as dominant a night you can possibly have at the plate. Dave Schoenfeld from ESPN had this note. Only 2 players have ever had 50 home runs in a season, and then also 50 stolen bases in another season. So basically, you got to look at it like, of anyone who's ever hit 50 home runs, have they ever at any other point had 50 stolen bases? Only 2 have done it. Barry Bonds, which you probably could have guessed, and Brady Anderson, which you may not have guessed. So Ohtani's going to have his 3rd MVP in 7 seasons. He's not even pitching this year, as we know. And I thought about this moment last night because it was one of those all-time moments. And of course, because I was so obsessed with baseball and everything that went through being obsessed with baseball and recognizing, honoring history, caring about history so much in a way that we didn't with the other sports, I thought about this moment and was like, what would it have been like 25 years ago? And again, this is not profound. I'm sure you have. It's been talked about. I mean, look, I can't do 15 minutes on him just being great because I would probably just be listing stats. And I don't know that that's the best listen. But again, I have the platform. So it's like, okay, well, you could do some more. I think we've done 3 like full-blown Ohtani interviews just to try to feel like you're doing the right thing, because this dude is right now, like, I don't think it is hyperbole to be like, what is this going to be? What's the end of this going to be if this is what he's going to do? And then he's going to potentially pitch again. He was 4th in Cy Young one year. So we all know that he's great, but I know that the moment will not be recognized the same way it would have been when I was younger. And I don't know if that's a baseball thing or a technology thing. I'm writing this book right now, and it's almost done. And there's a few things that I need to do a better job with. But one of the things I want to talk about is the speed of movement of like information, right? Like how quickly we will be told something and then it's like, that seems like a big deal. Then like the next day, we just don't have enough time. There's too many other things to keep track of. And it can really come down to you, like what you actually want to prioritize or whatever. But if you just kind of look at like the landscape of our consciousness in the country with big stories. And for me, it's sports, because that's what I'm doing every single day. It's like, well, this should be a bigger deal. And Ohtani should be the biggest deal. Last night should be a huge deal. I don't know if a quarterback threw for 700 yards, say, in a football game, like, would everybody just be doing the 700-yard game the next day on their shows? I mean, TV shows would get it in, radio shows would get it in, but would you find ways to create talking points in different segments and be like, we need to stay on this the entire show because it's that big of a deal? With baseball, if you would have the equivalent of this, if this is 1995 with Ohtani, most like shows would start to finish be talking about it because it would be that big of a deal, because we had those things with the home run chases and all those things. And yeah, I think either we've been desensitized by the history or felt a little betrayed and all those different things, but that's not happening here with Ohtani. But it's still going to get lost. Like, you're going to be thinking about your parlays by the end of today. You're going to be watching college, you read all over the NFL. And then there may be a moment even next week, you're like, what did he do? And I don't think that happens years ago. So back to like the speed of movement of information, but really I could call it just the speed of movement of things. I want to use an example from the past. If you're of a certain age, you remember the movie Adam, right? John Walsh, America's Most Wanted. It's an awful story. Son was abducted, killed in 1981. And if you were a kid at that time, like I was, this movie Adam came out on NBC and 38 million people watched it on NBC. 38 million. It was so popular. They re-aired it again in 1984 and then again a year later in 1985. Now, granted, we had 3 channels, no internet, so there weren't a ton of options. But when one of those networks decided something was going to be a big deal, it was going to be a big deal. And it was so much of our daily consciousness that if you walked away from your mom at Marshall's, you got screamed. You just saw moms screaming at their kids everywhere because every kid thought someone was going to steal them, and every parent thought their kid was going to be stolen. Because we stayed on this, which again was an important story, but we stayed on it. It was there was no speed of movement, is my point. Things moved so slow that we didn't really have the thing that we all were talking about, thinking about. We didn't have the next thing to necessarily replace it. And today, we have things in the afternoon that will replace things that I thought should have been a big deal in the morning. Like I remember when there was a 10th planet, potentially Gong Gong, and then we found out that it was just a trans-Neptunian dwarf planet, which, huge disappointment. But at the time of its supposed discovery, I remember thinking, like, shouldn't this be a bigger deal that there could be a 10th planet? It's like, no, it isn't. There's other stuff already. So I don't know if the Ohtani part of the story is that it's a baseball thing that we've all covered, and I, again, sampled here a bit. As much as it's just, there's something else. There's already something else. So yeah, awesome job. Thanks for what you did last night. But we're not going to talk about this for more than the day window.